Hello, my friends. So, I wanted to go on to the next chapter in Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. Um, the next chapter talks about the psychic prana. So, I'm just going to start reading. We'll see, maybe read the whole chapter. We'll see how it goes. According to the yogis, there are two nerve currents in the spinal column called the Pingala and the Ida. I'm not sure if I'm saying those right. And a hollow canal called the Sushmana running through the spinal cord. So this is talking about, just like pause, time out, I'll explain. This is talking about those three canals, those energy channels that I've been talking about that prana flows through, that there's three of in the Indian culture. And the third one, the Sushmana, is the one where the Kundalini energy comes up from its dormant location lower than the root chakra. So that gives you a little background. Okay, we'll continue. At the lower end of the canal is what the yogis called the lotus of the Kundalini. They describe it as triangular in form. In it, in the symbolical language of the yogis, where is coiled up a power called the Kundalini. When the Kundalini awakes, it tries to force a passage through this hollow canal, and as it rises, step by step, as it were, layer after layer of the mind opens up, and many different visions and wonderful powers come to the yogi. When it reaches the brain, the yogi becomes perfectly detached from the body and mind. The soul realizes its freedom. We know that the spinal cord is shaped in a peculiar manner. If we take the figure 8 horizontally, we see two parts, which are connected in the middle. Now, if you pile up a number of 8s, one on top of another, that will represent the spinal cord. The left side is the Ida, the right side is the Pingala, and that hollow canal which runs through the center of the spinal cord is the Sushmana. Where the spinal cord ends in some of the lumbar vertebrae, a fine fiber issues downwards, and the canal runs through that fiber, only much finer. The canal is closed at the lower end, situated near what is called the sacral plexus, which, according to modern physiology, is triangular in form. The different plexuses that have their centers in the spinal canal can very well stand for the different lotuses of the yogi. The yogi describes several centers, beginning with the Muladhara, that's the root chakra, the basic, and with the Sahasrara, the thousand-petal lotus in the brain, and that is talking about the crown chakra. So if we take the different plexuses as representing these lotuses, the idea of the yogi can be understood very easily in the language of modern physiology. We know that there are two sorts of actions in the nerve currents, one afferent and the other one efferent, one sensory and the other motor, one centripetal and one centrifugal. One carries the sensations to the brain and the other from the brain to the outer parts of the body. In the long run, these vibrations are all connected with the brain. There are several other facts which we have to remember in order to clear the way for the explanation which is to come. The spinal cord at the brain ends in sort of a bulb in the medulla, which is not attached to the brain but floats in a fluid in the brain, so that if there is a blow to the head, the force of that blow will be dissipated in the fluid and will not hurt the bulb. This is an important fact to remember. Secondly, we have also to remember that of all the centers, 3 are particularly important. The Muladhara, the Sahasrara, and the Manipura, which is the solar plexus chakra. So they're talking about the root chakra, the crown chakra, and the solar plexus, which is like in your center mass, your powerhouse. Next, we shall take one fact from physics. We all hear of electricity and various other forces connected with it. What electricity is, no one knows, but so far as it is known, it is sort of a motion. There are various other motions in the universe. What is the difference between them and electricity? Suppose that this table moves and that the molecules which compose this table are moving in different directions. But if they are all made to move in the same direction, then this motion will be electricity. Electricity becomes manifest when the molecules of the body move in the same direction. If all the air molecules in a room are made to move in the same direction, that will make a gigantic battery of electricity of the room. Another point we must remember from physiology is that the nerve center which regulates the respiratory system, the breathing system, has a controlling action over the whole system of nerve currents. Now we can see why rhythmical breathing is practiced. In the first place, from it comes a tendency of all the molecules in the body to move in the same direction. When the mind, by nature distracted, becomes one-pointed and thus is changed into a strong will, the nerve currents, too, change into a motion similar to electricity, for the nerves have been proved to show polarity under the action of electric currents. This shows that when the will is transformed into the nerve currents, it changes into something like electricity. Therefore, when all the motions of the body have become perfectly rhythmical, the body becomes a gigantic battery of will. This tremendous will is exactly what the yogis want to acquire. This is, therefore, the physiological explanation of pranayama. It tends to bring a rhythmic action to the body and helps us through the respiratory center to control the other centers. The aim of pranayama is to rouse the coiled up power in the Muladhara called the Kundalini. Everything that we see or imagine or dream, we have to perceive in space. This is the ordinary space called the Mahakasa, or physical space. When a yogi reads that the thoughts of other men when a yogi reads the thoughts of other men or perceives supersensuous objects, he sees them in another sort of space called the Chittakasa, the mental space. When perception has become objectless and the soul shines in its own nature, it's called the Chittakasa, or knowledge space. When the Kundalini is aroused and enters the canal of Sushmana, all the perceptions are in the mental space. When it has reached that end of the canal which opens out into the brain, the objectless perception is in the knowledge space. Taking the analogy of electricity, we find that man can send a current only along a wire, but nature requires no wires to send her tremendous currents. This kind of makes me think of, side note, this kind of makes me think of all the Nikola Tesla stuff that I've been watching recently. This proves that the wire is not really necessary. Only our inability to dispense with it compels us to use it. Similarly, all the sensations and motions of the body are being sent into the brain and sent out of it through these wires of the nerve fibers. The columns of the sensory and motor fibers in the spinal cord are the Ida and Pingala of the yogis. They are the main channels through which the afferent and efferent currents travel. But why should not the mind send news without any wire or react without any wire? We see this done in nature. The yogi says that if you can do that, you have got rid of the bondage of matter. How can you do it? If you can make the current pass through the Sushmana, the canal in the middle of the spinal column, you have solved the problem. The mind has made this network of the nervous system, and it has to break it so that no wires will be required to work through. Then alone will all knowledge come to us, no more bondage of the body. That is why it is so important that we should get control of the Sushmana. I'm probably saying it wrong, which is really kind of comical with how many times I've said it. If we can send the mental current through that hollow canal without any nerve fibers to act as wires, the yogi says the problem is solved. And he also says it can be done. This sushumana is an ordinary person's closed up at the lower extremity. No current comes through it. The yogi proposes a practice by which it can be opened and the nerve currents made to travel through it. When a sensation is carried to a center, the center reacts. This reaction in the automatic centers is followed by motion. In the conscious centers, it is followed first by perception and secondly by motion. All perception is the reaction to action from outside. How then do perceptions in dreams arise? There is then no action from outside. The sensations must therefore have been coiled up somewhere. For instance, I see a city. The perception of that city is from my reaction to the sensations brought from outside objects comprising that city. That is to say, a certain motion in the brain molecules has been set up by the motion in the in-carrying nerves, which again are set in motion by external objects in the city. Now, even after a long time, I can remember the city. Dreams are exactly the same phenomena, only in a milder form. But whence is the action that set up even the milder form of similar vibrations in the brain? Certainly not from the primary sensations. Therefore it must be that the sensations are coiled up somewhere, and by their action bring out the mild reaction, which we call dream perception. Now, the center where all the residual sensations are, as it were, stored up, is called the Muladhara, the root receptacle, and the coiled up energy of action is the Kundalini, the coiled up. It is very probable that the residual motor energy is also stored up in the same center, since after deep study or meditation on external objects, the part of the body where the Muladhara center is situated, probably the sacral plexus, gets heated. Now, if this coiled up energy is roused and made active, and then consciously made to travel up the Sushumna canal, as it acts upon center after center, a tremendous reaction will set in. When a minute portion of energy travels along a nerve fiber and causes a reaction from the centers, this perception is either dream or imagination. But when by the power of long internal meditation, the vast mass of energy stored up travels along the Sushumna and strikes the centers, the reaction is tremendous, immensely superior to the reaction of dream or imagination, immensely more intense than the reaction of sense perception. It is super sensuous perception. And when it reaches the metropolis of all sensations, the brain, the whole brain, as it were, reacts, and the result is the full blaze of illumination, the perception of the self. As this Kundalini force travels from center to center, layer after layer of the mind, as it were, opens up, and the universe is perceived by the yogi in its fine or casual form. Then alone are the causes of the universe, both as sensation and as reaction, known as they were, and hence comes all knowledge. The cause being known, the knowledge of the effects is sure to follow. Thus the rousing of the Kundalini is the one and only way to the attaining of divine wisdom, superconscious perception, realization of the spirit. The rousing may come in various ways, through love for God, through the mercy of perfected sages, or through the power of the analytic will of the philosopher. I'm not sure what the case was with myself. A combination of all. Whenever there has been any manifestation of what is ordinarily called supernatural power or wisdom, There a little current of the Kundalini must have found its way into the Sushumna. Only in the vast majority of such cases the people had ignorantly stumbled on some practice which set free a minute portion of the coiled-up Kundalini. All worship, consciously or unconsciously, leads to this end. The man who thinks that he is receiving a response to his prayers does not know that the fulfillment comes from his own nature, that he has succeeded by the mental attitude of prayer in waking up a bit of his infinite power which is coiled up within himself. Thus, what men ignorantly worship under various names, through fear and tribulation, the yogi declares to the world to be the real power coiled up in every being, the mother of eternal happiness. And Raja Yoga is the science of religion, the rationale of all worship, all prayers, forms, ceremonies, and miracles. Sending you love and positive vibes. 3. Hello, my friends. The next chapter in Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda is on Pratyahara and Dharana. I hope I'm pronouncing those correctly. So here we go. The next step is called Pratyahara. What is this? You know how perceptions arise. First of all, there are external instruments, then the internal organs, functioning in the body through the brain centers, and last there is the mind. When these join together and attach themselves to some external object, then we perceive it. At the same time, it is very difficult to concentrate the mind and attach it to one organ only. The mind is a slave of physical objects. We hear, "Be good, be good, be good," taught all over the world. There is hardly a child born in any country in the world who has not been told, "Do not steal, do not tell a lie." But nobody tells the child how he can avoid stealing or lying. Talking will not help him. Why should he not become a thief? We do not teach him how not to steal, we simply tell him, "Do not steal." Only when we teach him how to control his mind do we really help him. All actions, internal and external, occur when the mind joins itself to certain centers called organs. Willingly or unwillingly, people join their minds to the centers, and that is why they do foolish deeds and feel miserable. But if the mind were under control, they would not do so. What would be the result of controlling the mind? It then would not join itself to the centers of perception, and naturally feeling and willing would be under control. It is clear so far, but is this possible? Certainly it is. You see it practiced in modern times. The faith healers teach people to deny misery and pain and evil. Their philosophy is rather roundabout, but it is part of yoga upon which they have somehow stumbled. Where they succeed in making a person throw off suffering by denying it, they really use a part of Pratyahara, for they make the mind of the person strong enough to ignore the senses. The hypnotists, in a similar manner, by their suggestion, excite in the patient a sort of morbid Pratyahara for the time being. So-called hypnotic suggestion can only act upon a weak mind, and only the operator, by means of fixed gaze or something else, has succeeded in putting the mind of the subject in a sort of passive, morbid condition. His suggestions never work. Now the control of the centers, which for a time is established in a patient, whether by a hypnotist or by a faith healer, is reprehensible because it leads to ultimate ruin. It is not really controlling the brain centers by the power of the patient's own will, but it is, as it were, stunning his mind for a time by sudden blows which another's will deliver to it. It is not checking the mad career of a fiery team by means of reins and muscular strength, but rather by asking another to deliver heavy blows on the head of the horses in order to stun them for a time into gentleness. By each one of these proceeds the man operated upon loses a part of his mental energies, till at last his mind, instead of gaining the power of perfect control, becomes a shapeless, powerless mass, and the only destination of the patient is the lunatic asylum. Every attempt at control which is not voluntary, not made with the individual's own will, not only is disastrous, but defeats its own end. The goal of each soul is freedom, mastery, freedom from the slavery of matter and thought, mastery of external and internal nature. Instead of leading towards that, every will current from another, in whatever form it comes, either directly controlling the organs or forcing one to control them while under a morbid condition, only rivets one more link to the already existing heavy chain of the bondage of the past thoughts, past superstitions. Therefore, beware how you allow yourselves to be acted upon by others. Beware how you unknowingly bring another to ruin. True, some succeed in doing good to many, for a time, by giving a new trend to their propensities, but at the same time they bring ruin to millions by unconscious suggestions they throw around, rousing in men and women that morbid, passive, hypnotic condition which makes them at last almost soulless. Whosoever asks anyone to believe blindly, or drags people behind him by the controlling power of his superior will, does an injury to humanity, though he may not intend it. Therefore, use your own minds, control body and mind yourselves, and remember that unless you are a diseased person, no extraneous will can work upon you. Avoid everyone, however great and good he may be, who asks you to believe blindly. All over the world there have been dancing and jumping and howling sects whose influence spread like an infection as they sing and dance and preach. They too are a sort of hypnotist. They exercise a singular control for the time being over sensitive persons, alas, often in the long run to degenerate whole races. It is healthier for the individual or the race to remain wicked than to be made apparently good by such morbid extraneous control. One's heart sinks to think of the amount of injury done to humanity by such irresponsible yet well-meaning religious fanatics. They little know that the minds which attain to sudden spiritual upheaval under their suggestions with music and prayers are simply making themselves passive, morbid, and powerless, in opening themselves to any other suggestion, be it ever so evil. Little do these ignorant, deluded persons dream that while they are congratulating themselves upon their miraculous power to transform human hearts, which power they think was poured upon them by some being above the clouds, they are sowing the seeds of future decay, of crime, of lunacy, and of death. Therefore, beware of everything that takes away your freedom. Know that it is dangerous, and avoid it by all the means in your power. He who has succeeded in attaching or detaching his mind to or from the centers at will has succeeded in Pratyahara, which means gathering towards, checking the outgoing powers of the mind, freeing it from the thraldom of the senses. When we can do this, we shall really possess character. When we shall have taken a long step towards freedom, before that we are mere machines. How hard it is to control the mind. Well has it compared to the maddened monkey in the story. There was a monkey, restless by his own nature, as all monkeys are. As if that were not enough, someone made him drink freely of wine, so that he became still more restless. Then a scorpion stung him. When a man is stung by a scorpion, he jumps about for a whole day. So the poor monkey found his condition worse than ever. To complete his misery, a demon entered him. What language can describe the uncontrollable restlessness of the monkey? The human mind is like that monkey, incessantly active by its own nature, and then becomes drunk with the wine of desire, thus increasing its turbulence. After desire has taken possession, comes the sting of the scorpion of jealousy at the success of others, and last of all, the demon of pride enters the mind, making it think itself all important. How hard to control such a mind! The first lesson, then, is to sit for some time and let the mind run on. The mind is bubbling up all the time. It is like that monkey jumping about. Let the monkey jump as much as he can. You simply wait and watch. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, and that is true. Until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. Give it the rein. Many hideous thoughts may come into it. You will be astonished that it was possible for you to harbor such thoughts. But you will find that each day the mind's vagaries are becoming less and less violent, that each day it is becoming calmer. In the first few months, you will find that the mind has a great many thoughts. Later you will find that they have somewhat decreased, and in a few more months they will be fewer and fewer until at last the mind is under perfect control. But you must patiently practice every day. As long as the steam is there, the engine must run. As long as things are before us, we must perceive them. So a man, to prove that he is not a machine, must demonstrate that he is under the control of nothing. This controlling of the mind and not allowing it to join itself to the centers is pratyahara. How is this practiced? It is a tremendous work. It cannot be done in a day. Only after a patient, continuous struggle for years can we succeed. After you have practiced pratyahara for a time, take the next step, dharana, holding the mind to certain points. What is meant by holding the mind to certain points? Forcing the mind to feel certain parts of the body to the exclusion of others. For instance, try to feel only the hand, to the exclusion of other parts of the body. When the chitta, or mind stuff, is confined and limited to a certain place, it is dharana. This dharana is of various sorts, and along with it, it is better to have a little play of the imagination. For instance, the mind should be made to think of one point in the heart. That is very difficult. An easier way is to imagine a lotus there. That lotus is full of light, effulgent light. Put the mind there. Or think of the lotus in the brain as full of light, or of the different centers in the sushumna mentioned before. The yogi must always practice. He should try to live alone. The companionship of different sorts of people distracts the mind. He should not speak much, because to speak distracts the mind. Not work much, because too much work distracts the mind. The mind cannot be controlled after a whole day's hard work. One observing the above rules becomes a yogi. Such is the power of yoga that even the last of it will bring a great amount of benefit. It will not hurt anyone, but will benefit everyone. First of all, it will calm down nervous excitement, bring peace, enable us to see things more clearly. The temperament will be better and the health will be better. Sound health will be one of the first signs, and a beautiful voice. Defects in the voice will be changed. This will be among the first of the many effects that will come. Those who practice hard will get many other signs. Sometimes there will be sounds as of a peal of bells heard at a distance, commingling and falling on the ear as one continuous sound. Sometimes things will be seen, little specks of light floating and becoming bigger and bigger, and when these things appear, know that you are progressing fast. Those who want to be yogis and to practice hard must be careful about their diets at first. But those who want only a little practice for an everyday business sort of life, let them not eat too much, otherwise they may eat whatever they please. For those who want to make rapid progress and to practice hard, a strict diet is absolutely necessary. They will find it advantageous to live only on milk and cereals for some months. As the bodily organization becomes finer and finer, it will be found in the beginning that the least irregularity throws one out of balance. One bit of food, more or less, will disturb the whole system until one gets perfect control, and then one will be able to eat whatever one likes. When one begins to concentrate, the dropping of a pin will seem like a thunderbolt going through the brain. As the organ gets finer, the perceptions get finer. These are stages through which we have to pass, and all those who persevere will succeed. Give up all argumentation and other distractions. Is there anything in dry intellectual jargon? It only throws the mind off its balance and disturbs it. The things of the subtler planes have to be realized. Will talking do that? So give up all vain talk. Read only those books which have been written by persons who have had spiritual experiences. Be like the pearl oyster. There is a pretty Indian fable to the effect that if it rains when the star Svati is in the ascendant, and a drop of rain falls into an oyster, that drop becomes a pearl. The oysters know this, so they come to the surface when the star appears, and wait to catch the precious raindrops. When the drops fall into them, quickly the oysters close their shells and dive down to the bottom of the sea, there patiently to develop the raindrops into pearls. You should be like that. First hear, then understand, and then, leaving all distractions, shut your minds to outside influences and devote yourselves to developing the truth within you. There is a danger of frittering away your energies by taking up an idea only for its novelty and then giving it up for another that is newer. Take one thing up and follow it, and see the end of it. And before you have seen the end, do not give up. He who can become mad with an idea, he alone sees the light. Those who only take a nibble here and a nibble there will never attain anything. They may titillate their nerves for a moment, but there it will end. They will be slaves in the hands of nature and will never go beyond the senses. Those who really want to be yogis must give up once and for all this nibbling at things. Take up one idea. Make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea, and just leave all other ideas alone. This is the way to success, and this is the way great spiritual giants are produced. Others are mere talking machines. If we really want to be blessed and make others blessed, we must go deeper. The first step is not to disturb the mind, not to associate with persons whose ideas are disturbing. All of you know that certain persons, certain places, certain foods repel you. Avoid them, and those who want to realize the highest must avoid all company, good or bad. Practice hard. Whether you live or die does not matter. You have to plunge in and work without thinking of the result. If you are brave enough, in 6 months you will be a perfect yogi. But those who take up just a bit of it and a little of everything else make no progress. It is of no use simply to take a course of lessons. To those who are full of tamas, ignorant and dull, those whose minds never get fixed on any idea, who only crave for something to amuse them, religion and philosophy are simply objects of entertainment. These are the unpersevering. They hear a talk, think it very nice, and then go home and forget all about it. To succeed, you must have tremendous perseverance, tremendous will. I will drink the ocean, says the persevering soul, and at my will mountains will crumble. Have that sort of energy, that sort of will. Work hard, and you will reach the goal. Sending you love and positive vibes.